Hey, you're here at the CRP with Chadillac, your host, and fight analyst, Devin Miller. Devin, how are you doing today out there on the road?
I'm doing good, man. Staying safe. How are you doing, Chad?
Hey, I'm wonderful. Went through a lot of technical stuff to get things going today. Man, what a bitch that was, but glad to have it over with, and we're rolling. Listen, you can start to catch something that Devin's doing that he created on his own, and we love it. It's called the CRP Minute. It's working really great. People are really responding to it. We appreciate all of that. You can catch it on Facebook on the Cage Rage Podcast Facebook page. So tune into that, and you'll see all kinds of great stuff. Devin he will keep you informed on what's going on in MMA, literally up to the minute almost, because the guy is a freaking encyclopedia of MMA. It's ridiculous how much is contained in that mind of his. I don't know how a brain like that works. I think he's taking what I used to have. It's scary. So, Devin, take us through. Where do you want to start at with Saturday, the UFC ESPN+2 at 2/2/219. The Moraes went out and looked like $1 million. The undercard looked like 1 million pesos, because that was about the worst undercard I've seen in my life. Other than, I'm going to bludgeon his name, but Magomed Bibliotov and Bontorian. I know I just screwed that up completely. Devin will get it nailed for me. But that was a fantastic fight, and I cringe when I see fights like that, because I'm like, man, open up and do what you know how to do, because he should have won that fight. He was the favorite, and I could see every reason why he was the favorite. But your Brazilian came on and won the fight. Brazil looked unbeatable Saturday night, and that we'll get into that in a little bit when we talk about sports versus entertainment. So go ahead, Devin, take us into it.
Well, yeah, that's funny you say that, Chad, because we didn't even discuss which fights we were going to cover. But the only highlight that I remember from what I did see that I thought was worth covering from the undercard was Rogerio Bontorin, who actually, according to Tapology, is the #1 flyweight in Brazil. And I think Bibliotov is a big underachiever. He's a better fighter than what he brings. But one of the other things to think about when it comes to that, and we're not going to spend too much time on it, but I think according to Henry Cejudo, they've cut Dustin Ortiz, and that was a flyweight fight. So they're still chopping away at that division, and right there was a perfect fight to show that division has talent. I don't know why they keep doing this, but I do want to spend some time with you, Chad, covering the main card.
Okay.
And I spent some time on the CRP Minute after each one, after Johnny Walker's win, Oliveira's win, Maia's win, Aldo's win, and then the main event with Moraes. I did a short video covering what we just saw, and I wanted to go a little bit more in depth with some of those fights, but we can definitely start at top with what we saw with Moraes, because you would agree with me, we now have a clear-cut #1 contender at bantamweight. Would you agree?
Well, I don't necessarily know that that's the case, but he definitely gave us enough evidence that he can plead his case, and if he won, nobody could argue it, right? So yeah, I mean, the guy looked phenomenal. First of all, he's an anatomy chart. We talked about the physical specimen that he is on the warm up before on the wage rage before the fight. But I mean, that guy he is incredibly chiseled. His physical features show in his development as an athlete, whereas I think Assuncao, on the opposite end of it, is really he's in the sunset. It really shows the difference in youth versus a guy who's been in there and is maybe kind of worn out and wrecked his body. Do you think that's the case, or is he just, what happened?
Well, Assuncao did just get a recent win over Rob Font, who's a top 10 bantamweight in his own self. And yeah. Assuncao's been one of those top guys for years. He didn't seem right in this fight. And Moraes did just go in there and finish in the first round. But the reason bring up Moraes as in my opinion at this point the clear-cut number one contender at bantamweight is because now he has 3 first-round finishes in a row over top talents. He knocked 2 brutal knockouts over Sterling and Jimmy Rivera, and now he just submitted Assuncao in the first round. The big thing is, and I want to know where you predict this goes, is obviously the big elephant in the room at the Cejudo Dillashaw rematch. Is Cejudo going to go up to? It still, as we just mentioned, it still looks like they're phasing out the flyweight. So, do you believe Cejudo is going to get the next crack at Dillashaw at bantamweight, or do you think they'll go ahead and make Dillashaw and Moraes? And I think they're probably going to end up screwing Moraes or just making him wait while they run back Dillashaw and Cejudo. Unfortunately,
I can answer that really easily. Tony Ferguson. How long do you want the list to be? Brock Lesnar comes in. Of course, they're going with Dillashaw and Cejudo again. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Money talks. Whatever fills the seats, asses in buckets is what matters. That's what promoters look at. And remember, this is ESPN+ now. This is no longer the UFC. This is the UFC on ESPN+. And the telling moment for me was when the main card changed over from the undercard, and Bisping sat down with the ESPN's new commentator that did the main card. I forget his name, Brian or Michael. I don't know, the guy with great big teeth and blonde hair. But whatever his name was, he did a superlative job at being extremely professional and flawlessly perfect. The UFC is not used to that because they don't have that kind of a delivery. They're more like me, where they sort of, yeah, that was really great, and we get excited and we work ourselves up. Whereas ESPN is, we're going to talk about things exactly like this, and this is the way it went, and he looked really good, and that's that. And they do their soundbite and they cut. So when Bisping sat down at the table with him, he said, and I'm not quoting this because I'll screw it up, but he basically said, "Thanks for having me, Michael." And then he went, or rather, "Thanks for joining us." He changed his own commentary in midstream, which was his only mistake, but it was a mistake that he'd made once before, and they told him in no uncertain circumstances at ESPN, "We run this show. You make sure everybody knows it." And Bisping has said he's got to go through a new level of hell to deal with what's going on with ESPN and being a commentator there instead of Fox. But he did the same thing at Fox. So, I kind of wanted to touch on that. And the reason I wanted to touch on that is to say that the reason that Moraes is going to be setting the bench is because ESPN is going to be saying, what makes the money? We can pay that undercard pennies, and they're going to come in and fight because they're on TV and it's the UFC. It's the undercard. Not very many people are going to watch it anyway, and it's streaming now, which makes a big difference, right? So because it's streaming, they're not going to watch it as much. We can throw the FUDs in there, and we'll put a couple good fighters in there. We'll bring a few in so that they move in locals and get the seats filled so that we don't have an empty stadium, because they don't like to see empty stadiums on film. Now, boxing can deal with that, but MMA doesn't know how to deal with empty seats on footage yet. We're just not there as a sport, right? So at some point we need to talk about, will the UFC become an entertainment industry like the WWE, or will they go into sports like boxing? And boxing's been back and forth, throughout the ages of boxing, and I think we're at the third edition of this in MMA. So that's why I say Moraes is setting the seats, and you're going to see, or Moraes is setting the seats, and you're going to see Dillashaw and Cejudo again sooner than later. They're going to make that happen fast.
Yeah, the only pro that I would say about what you just mentioned about ESPN that I'm starting to notice a little bit is I do think that they're going to start spending less attention on a full card and start really trying to groom new stars.
Yeah.
out of it. You saw that with how they handled Johnny Walker. You know, they guarantee they're going to start pushing Johnny Walker. And
Tell
another
me
thing I
why.
noticed
Tell me
was
why, Devin.
because that division needs somebody. Those divisions, we've talked about that on the CRP before, about heavyweight and light heavyweight is so thin still that they need some new talent. And now they got this guy, 6'6", big guy. He's wrecking guys in the first round. He's got that kind of a goofy mannerisms, big smile. You know, he seemed, yeah, just so lax, just so chill against the cage before the fight. And he's got such a cool, memorable name. You know, so I mean, there's so much there. Like he's exactly what they need right now. And they might. I just hope they don't push him too fast. But that was definitely a highlight reel for a division with a young 26-year-old athletic freak who's cracking guys. That was cool to see. And another thing with the ESPN deal that I've noticed is that they do seem to be doing a little bit better with their promos than what Fox did.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they've got that background, that narrator type of style with, you know, Fox did a really poor job of marketing their headlines on the average fight night.
Yeah.
The UFC seems to really be putting some effort into the top fights, the big fights. And they're also bringing them on to First Take, Sports Center. Helwani's all over ESPN right now, constantly bringing attention to who's fighting this weekend. I think that's good for the sport. But I see what you're saying, that the undercard might take a hit, that we might start seeing way attention toward the undercard and more attention towards certain fights. Because even I'm coming today with basically the main card that's worth. That I feel like that was my big takeaway, that the main card was the big focus of the weekend. And even you can kind of take Maia off of that because there's not really a whole lot to talk about with him. He got a win. It was nice. It was an impressive win for the old dog. It was kind of predictable. I thought it was pretty safe that was going to be a gimme fight for him in at this point of his career in Brazil. And I was happy to see it. But when it comes to Moraes, Aldo, Oliveira, and Walker, there's some pretty good storylines I thought to come out of there. And I think that we've covered Moraes and stuff. I think we should, and Johnny Walker. I think we should definitely give a little tip our hats a little bit to Jose Aldo if you want to take us there.
Okay, so let me go through the main card with you real quickly here. I know you know this, but for those watching who don't, the main card started with Johnny Walker and Justin Leddit, but you know that's not. I don't consider that a test for Walker. I don't think Walker's been tested at all. He tried to kick the guy when he was down, for Christ's sakes. It's pretty obvious that he is very raw, very green. But like you said, he's got personality. And, man, I used to tell my fighters this all the time. Personality over fists every time. You will make more money on personality. Spend more time on the microphone and less time in the mirror. You know, or if you're going to be in the mirror, be talking to the mirror. Because your mouth is what's going to get you paid. And Johnny Walker knows that. He's just the kind of guy that he's doing any kind of quirky, weird thing he can. And the more they pay attention to it, the more he does it, right? And i.e. Conor McGregor. McGregor was a guy who came in and was brash, and he was a little bit over the top, and he was arrogant, and people were kind of like, whatever, he's not really that good. And he came into himself from that because he had to defend that. That also did something special for him. It allowed him to go to the UFC's training center. It allowed him to buy coaches that he couldn't afford before, supplements he couldn't afford before, legal or illegal. That's everybody's own guess. It allowed him to get training that he couldn't do before, and allowed him to quit his day job, right? So when fighters are able to do that, that's a big, big deal.
On that point real quick, Chad, it's knowing that Conor McGregor is a multi-millionaire worth $90 to $100 million. It's so crazy to think back at his debut when he got the knockout on Marcus Brevich. 60 G's, baby! Like, you know, they've been yelling about 60 grand.
Yeah.
You know, like, and he was so excited about a fight bonus. He was a plumber. You know, he didn't even have money like that. So, yeah, and I think Johnny Walker, like you said, that wasn't a test fight. That was a fight. We're going to make a name off this kid, is what I got off of that. We're going to bring it in. This is a showcase fight for him, and you know that as a promoter.
Yep.
There's tests, there's showcases. That was a showcase fight for Johnny, and, you know, he passed it, 15-second knockout. So
okay, so tell me this, Devin. Where if you're the matchmaker, I'm the promoter, and I'm going, I want him tested, but make sure he fucking wins because he puts asses in buckets. Don't fuck this up, Devin. Who do you matchmake him with? Because make no mistake about it, that's the business, folks. Anybody who kids themselves, they're crazy.
I'm thinking of that one, the one guy that Daniel Cormier fought that had the porno 1970s porno mustache. What's his name? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
What is his name? Hold on. That's who I think they'll probably.
That's worthy of looking up.
Yeah, very worth of looking up, and I think he's ranked. I think he's in the top 15, believe it or not. And there's him. They're not going to throw him in against like a Dominic Reyes because that's another up and comer that is a very talented kid. Well, I guess he's not in the rankings now. I could see him against a Nikita Krylov. I could see him against a Shogun maybe. They might throw Shogun to the wolves to make a name off of him. Open St. Preux. Hold on.
I've got the perfect fight for you. Are you ready? Bring back Wes Sims.
He's been gone for years, though, hasn't he?
Yeah, but I mean, Wes is still technically kind of under contract. They did a little thing with him 2 years ago where Wes is a friend of the show. He's a friend of mine. I've known Wes for forever. And Wes is the kind of guy that could go out there and beat Walker, and he could also get his ass beat by Walker because he's old enough and he's out of shape enough. That would be a great test because then that's a good name. And Wes is goofy and crazy like that. You have no idea how goofy and crazy Wes is, but he's wild, man. He's a blast.
I was thinking of Patrick Cummins. Is who I was thinking about with the crazy mustache. But if they really want to push him fast, they could throw him in there. Or maybe if they really want to test him, Jimmy Manuwa or Glover Teixeira would be good options.
Man, that's too much. That's too soon. Teixeira runs through him. Soon.
Well, yeah, he needs it. He only has, he's 2-0 in the UFC. He could get a couple more showcase fights before he gets one of these big fights. And we need to see him tested a little bit more gradually because he's only 26. They need a superstar. They don't need him getting beat too soon. You know, I think they'll take it slow with Johnny Walker.
Hey, Devin, did he come off of looking for a fight? Is that what he's from?
No, he's from Brazil. He had his first fight in the UFC. He fought Khalil Roundtree, who's a pretty tough fighter, and just brutally knocked him out with an elbow. I mean, it was impressive.
Yeah, he's a tough veteran, right?
Yeah, no, he's more of a newer guy. He knocked out Gokhan Saki in the UFC since he's been in. And,
okay.
Yeah, and Johnny Walker ran through him. But you've already got people like it. Hardcore fans get mad at the people who like to jump on the trains too fast, but that just shows that this is somebody that's getting a lot of attention. Scrolling through Twitter after Johnny's knockout, oh, he's the guy that's going to beat John Jones. He's going to be the future champ. He's all this. We don't know that yet. We need to see this guy. You know, we don't. I'm indifferent right now. I'm ignorant. I don't know. We need to see him tested before we can make any kind of judgment about him. I don't know any. I've never seen any of his prior fights to the UFC. I've seen him run through two guys. That doesn't tell me a lot. But what does tell me a lot is his mannerisms, the way he's carrying himself. He oozes superstar to me. So I think we're going to see a big name come out of him. I've got a feeling. Yeah, I think that he's going to be a pretty top contender. But I want to see more. Like you said, I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon just overnight. So we got to see more.
I'm going to say this. I'm going to say if they're smart, They give him one more fight, somebody really easy that they know he can beat, and then they give him 8 months to do nothing but train twice a day, 6 days a week, with cryo and heat therapies and stem cells and everything at his disposal so that he can recover and be the ultimate athlete without using performance-enhancing drugs. And from that, then we see basically, almost a year of a fighter really training at the top level. And then we see him come in with that phenomenal physique and that ability and the reach, the speed, the strength, all of that stuff. We put that together, and then we find out whether or not he's really that guy. Sort of like taking a basketball player who's a good power forward and putting him out on a tight end for receiving and see how he does, in the NFL. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. So we'll see what happens with him on that. Anyways, so the next one I really want to cover, and I love this guy, and on our wage rage, I blew it totally on this because I had not done my homework. You caught me. I was calling him Olivier. Oliveira is a fighter that I wasn't on my game the other day, guys. I apologize. Had a lot going on, but Oliveira is one of those guys that I put him up there with the Fergusons and the Holloways and those long, lanky guys who are able to do really rare and bizarre things. Top 13 submissions in the UFC, the most ever. Talk about that for a minute.
Well, he's definitely making a legend out of himself, even though he's currently not ranked in any division, and he's had kind of an up and down career. I'm looking at his record right now. He's now on a 4-fight win streak, and he's always been one of the biggest underachievers in the sport. Like, he's been a hit or miss type of guy. He wants to go back down to 45 for some reason, where he's missed weight 4 times. And real quick before I go any further, you said you blew it. I blew it. I chose David Tamer. I really thought that Oliveira has been inconsistent, and Tamer has showed some seriously good kickboxing. And I've never seen Oliveira look better on the feet. And the setup for the dark choke was brilliant. But Oliveira has losses to Paul Felder and Ricardo Lamas, Anthony Pettis, Max Holloway beat him, Frankie Edgar beat him back in the day. But he's got 13 submission wins in the UFC, and I shared that on my CRP minute in my recap of Oliveira's fight. There was a tweet that was talking about how he's got 13 submission wins, which is the record in UFC history. Nobody else has 10. Not Royce Gracie, not Demian Maia. Who are some other top-level submission wins?
Royce Gracie has 10, and Demian Maia has 10. Demian joined him that night with 10. Yep.
Okay, yeah. And Oliveira has 13, and he's 29. And he's on a 4-fight win streak. I think he looks better at 55. I think he
definitely
needs to stay at 55. Cut the frame. There's no reason for him to cut the weight. I think he's coming into his own. I think he's really blossoming and starting to finally see his true potential. And he's a character, man. I would like to see him fight somebody in the top 15 next. I know Paul Felder just knocked him out with some brutal elbows a couple years ago. But Paul Felder was throwing a lot of different almost got caught a few times in that fight. And if Oliveira doesn't go to sleep in the middle of the fight, he's usually a very hard one to deal with. And go to sleep, I don't mean get knocked out. I mean, sometimes he just seems like he gets lazy. And, because he's a very good fighter. I mean, he gave Frankie Edgar a hell of a fight a few years ago at 145. So,
yeah, but you're talking about a guy who, you hit it right on the head. Late in the fight, he tires out. Well, he's cutting a lot of weight. The guy's like 6'1" or whatever he is, 6'2", and he's cutting down to 145 pounds. Man, I'm 5'6", and there's no way I could make 165 pounds right now, let alone 145. You know what I mean? For these guys to drop that kind of weight and then go in there and perform for 15 minutes at the highest level in the world, with no IV. Remember, they took IVs away, which is one of the dumbest things they've ever done. you either make them do day of weigh-ins so that people stop cutting the massive weight, which I would prefer, or you go back to IVs, one or the other. But that's another story. Okay, so we missed it on that one. Both of us missed it for whatever that's worth. We move up though. Demian Maia, go ahead. I mean, give the old man his props at least. Let's at least do that.
Well, that's what it is, Chad. We're going to give him, we got to mention him because he deserves it. He deserves a lot of respect. Demian Maia, Donald Cerrone has the win record in the UFC with 22 wins now. I think tied for second place is St. Pierre, Bisping, and Demian Maia with 20 wins.
Yeah.
This is a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest submission jiu-jitsu practitioners we've ever seen in the sport. Fought for the title a few times, once against Anderson, once against Tyron Woodley. He's always been in the top 10, whether it's at middleweight or at welterweight. He's kind of taken on a gatekeeper role where, if you can get by him like Woodley, like Usman and Covington just did, you get pushed into title contention. And he's 41 years old. He's on his way out. That was good to see him get a win like that in his hometown. It was kind of predictable. That's why we didn't cover it on Weight Rage. It was kind of a fight that we all kind of seen. That Lyman Good's a good fighter, but if Jorge Masvidal couldn't get Maia off him for 3 rounds, and he survived, which was amazing, credit to Masvidal, Lyman Good was going to get his back. Yeah, but if Masvidal got his back taken that many times, Lyman Good was going to get his back taken and choked out. I was pretty confident of that. So, but Demian Maia, good for him, man. I'm glad to see him get a win like that in his home country, and big props to him. He's easily probably one of the best grapplers, if not the best that we've ever seen in the sport. Nobody wants to hit the mat with that guy. Nobody.
Yeah. Well, and not to mention, he tied Royce Gracie's record for second most submissions at 10, and something weird that he said, and he's Brazilian, and Demian said Royce Gracie on the after-fight interview, which I thought was weird. Doesn't matter. Just something weird I caught. Just one of those weird things I pay attention to. Anyway, props to Maia. Great job. He said he wants to fight 3 or 4 more times yet, and he wants to be done. So I think he may be a guy that's like, maybe I'll try and get that significant 14 and see if I can't get 14 before I'm out of here. We'll see. That's kind of a race, and you kind of get into those kind of races with guys like Oliveira and him, and it starts to be pretty interesting to watch in its own right. We'll see what happens, because I believe that what we saw Saturday night was a step towards the development of a Brazilian show about Brazil, because the entire card was really Brazilians. And I think that's what you're going to see. We've got a couple of Brazilian champions right now. Not the biggest Brazilian champion, obviously Nunes. Amanda Nunes was there. She's taking some other girls under her wing now. She trains at ATT. She's representing the entire country and doing it magnificently. She represents the LGBT community and does that with grace and style. She's just a great champion, and whether she's the GOAT or not of women's MMA, I don't want to talk about that, but I just wanted to recognize her. So then we come to your man. Take it away. Tell me about Jose.
Well, I got to apologize again. I mentioned, I don't know if you caught my CRP minute right after the fight, but I gave you a shout out. I said, I'm sorry, Chad, I'm 0-2 right now. I went 1-2 on the night with Wage Rage. I feel like such a fool, man. But I can justify it. I'm going to justify my miscalling this. Listen, Aldo is out there saying, I don't even want a 5-round fight. In fact, he didn't even want to be the main event of this card. You know why? Because it was a 5-round. Because they got this 5-round main event mandate now, which I don't. Chael Sonnen doesn't understand it, and I don't understand it either.
I don't like
main events have to be. And Aldo's like, dude, I don't want to fight 70% more of a fight. I'm not interested. So make me the co-main event, which I thought it should have been the co-main event anyway. I thought Moraes and Assuncao was the rightful main event, but he doesn't want to fight 5-round fights. He doesn't want to pursue gold. He's talking about he doesn't want to fight past 2019. And then you got this hungry, talented Renato Moicano, who's coming up. So it gave me the impression, man, I don't feel safe betting on Jose when he's talking like that. But, oh, man, this is vintage Aldo. He looks better than he has in years. And when you look at the statistics, Chad, 14. We mentioned St. Pierre, we mentioned Silva, Jones, Cormier, Fedor, Mighty Mouse. Those are always in the GOAT talk. Where is Jose Aldo? 14 years. 14 years. 2 men have beat him. 2 men have beat him in 14 years. All while he's fighting the best of the best in his division. And even after his 2 bad losses to Holloway, he's coming back and he's finishing top 5, top 10 talent. Jeremy Stevens and Renato Moicano back to back.
That body shot on Stevens, man.
He is one of the greatest fighters we've ever seen. That kind of longevity. Yeah, you can make an argument to put Conor and Holloway up there with him right now, especially Holloway because Holloway beat him twice. But
Holloway,
are they going to be? I mean, I think they could be. I think especially Holloway because he's so young, but he's got some neurological issues that he's got to deal with.
Yeah.
That's off topic. But are they going to be around for a decade and a half? You know what I mean? A decade and a half? The longevity of this man. I mean, do we rank Fedor lower than we do Antonio Silva or Fabricio Verdum on the GOAT list just because he got beat by them? Nobody does.
No.
Jose Aldo dominated for a decade and a half, and he's still winning, finishing guys. Jose the Great. That's what I used to call him for years. And yeah, he lost it. He got that 13-second horrible knockout from McGregor and then got beat down by Holloway twice. Give that man his props. He is one of the very best. He is arguably the best that we've ever seen. He is. That was great. That was great. I was never happier to be wrong.
Well, I agree with you on that. He's an amazing fighter, and I was really glad that he won the fight because if he loses that fight, he goes away. And he goes away, 4 down, and it really looks pretty ugly. Losing 4 out of 5 or whatever it would be, 4 out of 5. So, you don't want to see that in a guy that was potentially one of the greatest. And you don't want to see him stick around too long. That's not the case with him. It's not that he stuck around too long. It's that he fought an entirely different game against Conor McGregor than he's ever fought before. He fought a guy who was much, much taller and longer than him, who was left-handed, who was very fast, who was extremely confident. And Jose said something after the fight that was really telling. He said, "I want to fight in Brazil." He doesn't want to go out of the country anymore. He wants to be with his family. He wants to be home. You see that out of a lot of fighters as they get into their 30s. They get a family. I mean, you want to be home with your family, right? You're on the road and you're like, man, I can't wait to get home and see my boy and, just be home. And I think a lot of people underestimate just how hard travel is on a fighter when they have to travel out of the country. Customs, passports, packing your bags, acclimating to the time change, acclimating to the weather changes. There's so many different things. For one thing, in Brazil right now, it's summer. It's winter here. It's summer there. So you've got that going on, right? So you step into the freaking Icelandic horrors of North America in the wintertime, and you left Rio de Janeiro on the beach when you were surfing. It's a really hard thing to do. I don't blame the guy for wanting to finish out, spend the rest of his fights down there, get a great record, go out on top. Who's he go out on top with, though? If he doesn't fight Blessed and he doesn't fight Conor, Conor's not going to give him that fight. I'd love it, but I don't think it's going to happen.
The thing, real quick. I've been thinking a lot about the podcast we did on potential contenders for Conor. Conor's done some rash things before. I mean, he fought Nate Diaz and Chad Mendez on short notice. He's always been going to fight Mayweather, wanting to be a 2-division champion. The way he called out Aldo for years and stuff. I don't think it's going to happen either because it's such a big risk. That's still his greatest win was that 13-second knockout. It's the most memorable win Conor has still. But man, is there a fight that would be my pick. I want to see that. I don't think it'll happen, but that your question about who he's going to fight next.
Yeah, because he can't beat Holloway, right? He doesn't do well against long, lanky guys, which is why I picked Moicano.
Well, in Holloway, it really begs to, but when you see how good Aldo is now, how good is Max Holloway? I mean, he really is just that good. But there has somebody did post something on Twitter. I mean, it was either Twitter or Instagram, and it's with the caption "Let the negotiations begin" with a side-by-side picture of Jose Aldo, which is my prediction of who he fights next, and that man was Brian Ortega, and I think that's probably what happens.
Bam!
I think that's a fight Aldo can win. I think that's a fight Aldo can beat him bad, but he can also he knocked out Edgar,
yeah,
and he's got submission skills. So that would be an interesting fight, especially a 3-round fight. I think that favors Aldo. So I think that's what we're going to see in Brazil. I think we're going to see Brian Ortega versus Jose Aldo. I think that'll be Jose's last fight, maybe, if he's serious about finishing up 2019 and retiring. And because I think Conor's going other places, and Max is clearly going other places. They've been there. That's not going. They're on their way up still. They're in their prime. Aldo's just capping off his career.
Yeah.
And I think Ortega would be if he can go in there and finish Ortega, he basically solidifies that I was still the second best featherweight when I retired. Max came in, he took the throne. Conor came in, they took the throne. These are maybe the two most popular guys in the sport now. I was the old legend, and I still ended up on a 3-fight finishing streak before it was over. And, I'm going to ride into the sunset with my reputation intact. And I think that's a great fight. Him and Ortega would love it. Love it. That'd be a good main event.
They've got in Brazil, they have this thing called jungle fights. And it's a promotion there. And it's huge. I guarantee you jungle fights sells more tickets than the UFC sold for the ESPN show Saturday night. Or right in the same vein, right? So it's jungle fights. It's not nearly the talent. Jose could go in if he wanted to. He could take kind of a step down and fight jungle fights if he wanted to even finish out his career. We've seen stranger things happen. If they wind up making a big enough purse for him, look for him to do some kind of super special fight thing like that. That's kind of the new rage, right? We're seeing fighters. Anderson Silva's coming back, and he's fighting. I disagree with that fight in every way. It's going to be a great fight, but I don't agree with it. You're bringing Anderson Silva back from the dead. I'm not sure I understand that.
To make a name for Adesanya, basically.
Yeah, I don't like that for a lot of different reasons. And Silva says, pay me because I need to get paid for this last one before I go out, right? Win, lose, or draw, it's about the cash. And so you're seeing a lot of that. And I think what the UFC will do with Jose Aldo is say, here's a guy that we have to honor. Because if we don't, we're going to look like assholes. And we want to clean our reputation up a little bit around the fighters. Because the UFC has a really bad reputation with fighters after they're gone. You talk to fighters that were with the UFC and they no longer are. They don't have a lot of good things to say about them unless there's still a chance that they can work for them somehow. Commentary, booth analysis, that kind of stuff. Sure, they're going to say nice things about him. But Chael Sonnen's this close all the time to saying Dana's a prick, the UFC fucked me, etc. So he's on the edge of it all the time. And he's the bad guy, right? The gangster, so he can do that. Not a lot of those guys can get away with that. Jose being one of them that probably couldn't. Jose has never badmouthed the UFC. He's never said bad things about them, even when probably he could have with the McGregor thing. And, there was a lot of pretty iffy stuff on that. Look for Jose to go out, but I think you're dead on with that. With Ortega, man, boom, I love that. I think that would be a fantastic way for him to go out, win, lose, or draw. He makes a huge payday, and he goes out on his terms in Brazil. I love that. Okay, so take me through the final one, man.
With Moraes and Assuncao?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Well, we covered it a little bit earlier, but Moraes goes in there. He gets the finish this time in the rematch with Assuncao. First round, he makes a very strong statement. This is coming off 2 brutal knockouts. One was like 1 minute and 7 seconds. The other was like 33 seconds. So he's on a big win streak. Three fights, 3 finishes of top 10 guys. He also had a split decision win over John Dodson before that, so he's won 4 straight. In my eyes, with Cruz being inconsistent, and he's always injured and hasn't been very active. With Garbrandt coming off of 2 losses to Dillashaw, and he's fighting Pedro Munoz. Moraes, in my opinion, is without a doubt the #1 contender for TJ right now. The thing is it's all coming down to what's going to end up happening with Cejudo. And it still looks like Cejudo's getting that division's getting closed out. So it's looking more and more likely, especially considering that we didn't even really get to see the fight. It ended in like 30 seconds. So I think we're going to end up seeing Dillashaw, a healthier Dillashaw at 35, against Cejudo coming in. And I think that Moraes will just be asked to sit idly by and wait for the winner. And I think that's probably what's likely going forward. But Marlon is showing that he's definitely title contender. Like I'm still, even after that defeat, very high on Dillashaw. I think he should wash his hands of the whole flyweight. I mean, if I had it my way, Cejudo would stay at flyweight, defend his belt, and TJ would go up and fight Moraes. And TJ should just wash his hand of the whole failed 125 experiment that clearly didn't pay off well for him. But the UFC seems just dead set on closing the 125 division, which is going to force Cejudo up. And to make it right, they're going to probably have to give him a title shot since he's already beat the champion. So I think that's probably what's likely. And Moraes has earned some time to sit by. The inactivity always scares me, though, man. He's hot now. He should be getting that fight now. They should be starting to plan negotiations for late summer, early fall, get that fight going. But you know how it is, man.
Well, look,
like you said earlier,
I put my promoter's cap on, and here's what I say. Moraes. Who is Moraes? Oh, TJ Dillashaw. Oh, yeah, man, he's a badass. Sold. There you go. I mean, that's all you need to know about it. Moraes is going to have to do some things. Like he said, leave those little kids alone and come back up to fight me or whatever he said. That was smart, but they had to force him to do that. Bisping was like, do you want to call somebody out? He almost was like, hey, dipshit, call somebody out. You got to call out TJ. So that's part of the game, and he's going to he's going to learn that as he goes. But we'll get into that another time. Devin, this has been a great show. I appreciate everything that you do for the podcast. Best edition we've had for MMA in a very long time, and we're building all the time. Keep in mind, we're still looking for a female fight analyst out there. So if you are that girl out there who loves fights and you train like crazy, drop us a mail, drop us a message, hit us up, let us know what you think about it. Hey, don't forget to smash that subscribe button below. Devin, you got anything to say before we get out of here?
No, I just would say go look up the Cage Rage podcast on Facebook. Hit the like button. Get on if you fall upon this video on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button. Leave us some comments. Give us some support. And I'm also going to plug for because I've been putting some work into it. My CRP minutes, which is like a substitute to the podcast. It's basically I'm doing them daily on Facebook for just covering headlines, covering news, and when we get on the podcast is when we go delve a little deeper and actually cover more of a wide ranging amount of topics and dig a little deeper. So, we got a lot of things we're working on. So, and all credit goes to Chad, who's the founder of all this. So,
all credit goes to having a great team, man. I love you guys, and I love doing this. Hey, we appreciate everything. Smash the button. If you don't like what we do, tell us. If you do, tell somebody else. Share it. Let everybody know about it. We're here. We're not going anywhere. We're staying right here and going up. So until next time, namaste.
Went out and he hasn't talked to me since. So he's pissed off at me. So if that fucking broad means more to him than his parents, then he could have her. Period. Because that's how it has been since he's met this fucking bitch. He does not talk to us, he does not do a goddamn thing for us, it's all for her. Oh, because I guess she sucks his dick or something, I don't know what it is. But goddamn it, that fucking woman's got him so wrapped around her finger that he doesn't know what the hell he's doing.
Coming and going.
He doesn't. That's all it is her.